This is where it gets super cool and interesting because there's so many ways to interpret this. And of course, as techies, we will go and understand the origins of maybe the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI, or how they were driving their own models, how other companies like Meta are driving their large language models, and anything in between. But what about interpreting how the financial world is performing and how everything around us does? And it's not easy as well because it's almost like this invisible hand that Adam Smith used to talk about. So it all starts with having the right terms. So let's look at a few of them. Some of them may be more familiar than others. So, first of all, it's the foundation models, the ones that we are thinking about when we're talking about large language models. So, what are these? These are the primary models. They have been trained on insane amounts of data. They are able to both understand as well as create human like text, which we're what we're used to with things like ChatGPT. Sometimes it's images, and how we go to things like either Copilot on Edge or Microsoft Designer, Midjourney, and whatnot, because it generates images. There's other really cool things out there that can generate audio or video that we've heard of, whether it's Vasa, Sora, and whatnot. So these really big models have the advantage that they've already been trained on the data, and there's very minimal intervention we need to do to fine tune them in order to produce the next layer of innovation. So essentially, they are the base for all the specialized AI apps that we love building. The second term that may not be as familiar, or maybe not as familiar in terms of how it can be used and harnessed in the financial world, is AI tokens. And it becomes the new currency of the world. So I'm not talking about cryptocurrency, obviously, that's a different topic, but maybe they have a relationship in a sense. So these are the fundamental units that are used when we're talking about the computing power that these foundational models and ultimately the AI apps that are built in are having. So think of it as how this kind of new currency in the world, because it's all about computing power at this point, right? This is about how they're going to play a new role in creating a new framework for, let's say, financial transactions, because at the end of the day, if we're basing so much of our technology on the foundation models, these foundation models now have the power of almost influencing the economic models that shape the world. And what do I mean by that? We probably all know more or less the usual supply and demand graph, right? So the further the supply rises, then the price decreases as well because of competition and whatnot. But adversely, if we have some really big foundation models that will be driving the world economy, so the models of GPT and whatnot, that are used to build so many applications and so many exclusive partnerships out of that, then it almost becomes its own driving force in the supply side of the economy. And having things like AI tokens becomes its own currency of itself. However, with every currency, we need to be a bit more specific about the metrics. I wonder if anyone has heard of flops. And no, I'm not talking about apps flopping in the market, but this is actually a metric that is used when it comes to the computational power of these models and any apps that are built on top of them. So this is essentially a metric that we use when it comes to the computing performance, just to understand how much you're generating in terms of output and the energy that you are consuming as well. And this becomes very important because ultimately, in this case, we want efficiency. So change awareness is about understanding also how the models that we're using, as well as the applications that are building our top, how efficient are they? How quickly are we able to ultimately get to the end results without using too many tokens? You might have seen that from the example by the way that Copilot Studio is licensed and how tokens matter there. Because ultimately, the more conversations you need to use and the more tokens in order to get to your result, the pricier it's going to be. So, how do we maximize that efficiency without using too much computing power and also energy? Energy is equally important because if we think about the environment, and how that computing power has a toll on it, right? It's still running on some server somewhere that either NVIDIA or someone is providing. This is also important. We all probably have been thinking, or enterprise, there is an ESG strategy. So this is equally important, that metric in terms of how we're impacting the environment. So another cool part of our superpower. So, getting these basics right is important because when we're having this conversation, it really makes us more aware about the power of the technology, but also the responsibility that we have.